It looks like it has broken free, probably because I didn't bend those tight enough against there. Crap. You know, it's been a really long time since I've even had this differential cover off. It hasn't even started leaking or anything, and that's probably why I haven't really thought much about it. It's been since, I think, 2021 since I actually had this cover off. I should probably change that fluid. I should be way better about some of these maintenance things, but I just like wheeling and I just want to be on the trail. So let's pop this cover off and see what we see. Now I always leave just the top bolt kind of halfway in so that the cover just doesn't just fall off, which I know it probably won't anyway, but when I start knocking it off, it just keeps the cover from falling off. It'll let the fluid drain. Sometimes you can just smack it with a rubber mallet or a dead blow and it will break free, but I have a certain way of doing differential covers that seals really well and it normally doesn't do it. Let's try anyway. Nope. And like I said, top bolt is just halfway in, so no matter what, it can't just come fall off and make a big mess on us. So that's kind of the intent. Well, that fluid was definitely not as clean as the front was. Okay, moment of truth. There's the gear oil. It's worth noting that on the magnet was that. I think that's part of the fingers for the retention ring on the stabilizer. I forget what they call it. The collar on the locker, actually. So that's not good news. Let's see what. Let's look closer. Spider gears look really good on the locker. It'll focus. Come on, focus. Spider gears look good. I can see that little finger ring. See this right here? That's where that, see this ring? Little, right there. See that little tab? That's what stops the locker engagement ring from moving too much. It looks like it has broken free, probably because I didn't bend those tight enough against there. Crap. Literal years of off-roading on this diff. That's the only issue. I haven't had any problems, and the locker still actually works just fine. So what I can probably do is pop this apart and make sure there's nothing horribly wrong. And just re-weld that tab on. Or if I need to get replacement parts from Eaton, I can do that. But even still, this locker has been such a reliable, faithful locker since 2021. And here we are, 2020. So I put the locker in the end of 2020. So, I mean, it's been 2.5 years. It's not quite 3, but 2.5 years. That's when it was. I remember now because I hadn't put the lockers in yet, and on Labor Day of 2020, I really wished I had them, and so I got lockers right after that. So I put them in Labor Day of probably October of 2020, and never took this diff cover off again. So let's start taking the wheels off. And you can see that as part of just the tires fitting and tucking so well, I do use 2-inch wheel spacers on the rear, which is fine because the rear is actually quite a bit narrower than the front. So when putting rear spacers on it, it makes the front and rear match width a lot closer. Next is the brake calipers. We actually need to unbolt the brake calipers from the caliper bracket and then the caliper bracket from the axle. So next up is the cross shaft, cross pin. It's this thing right here, and you'll notice, you see this right here and this right here, that's actually the ends of the axle shaft. So when the cross pin is installed, the axle shafts can't push inward any further, and that's kind of what holds the C-clips in place as well. So we have to remove this, and the cross pin also is what the spider gears, see these spider gears spin on, so they can actuate with the side gears and give you differential action when the differential is unlocked. This cross shaft is what actually transfers all the force from the ring gear to the carrier, to the shafts. So the ring gear is mounted to the carrier, and then the carrier puts the force into that cross shaft, that when it's locked, that cross shaft is what transfers it to the axle shafts. So we need to pull that out in order to get the axle shafts out. So what we'll do, we'll spin this down. You see, now I've already loosened this cross shaft retainer bolt out. It actually normally threads in like that. Okay, and you can see that it goes about that far through the cross shaft through a hole and keeps it from backing out. You see I've got red Loctite on the threads of this because you don't want that backing out and you don't want to over torque it. I've worked on many differentials where other people have installed this and over tightened it, and this was rounded and mangled. We couldn't get it off the proper way. And so honestly, don't over tighten it, put some Loctite so it doesn't back out, and be fine with it, because the Loctite will keep it from backing out, and then you won't have any real problem with it in the future. So as I mentioned, the cross shaft has a hole in it, and you can just there's the hole for that cross shaft retainer bolt. So we'll spin this back up. As I mentioned earlier, the cross shaft is what keeps the axles from pushing further inward. So with that removed, you can actually see, look, I'm pushing out on the wheel mounting surface. See, I'm putting pressure and pushing that axle in. And you see the C-clip can now be removed. Let's try the other side. See? Sometimes you need a magnet or a hook, but this time they just came out pretty easily. With the cross shaft removed and the C-clips removed, the axle shafts just come out. With this being an E-locker, an electric locker, that means there's actually wiring going into the locker itself. See this here? There's that. I've got a zip tie, just a brake line, but there it is. Weather tight connectors. It's old and faded, but this is my Matco Tools terminal toolkit, and it has all the little tools to slip in there to release the pins from these connectors. As I recall, I need that one. Okay, so that connector's giving me a little bit of trouble, and I got plenty of slack. So what I'm going to do is, I've got more pins too for it, so I'm just going to cut it off and I'll fix it later. Look at that. Okay. Now on this next step, you want to always verify that you've got it marked. Okay. Now I know that I have this differential apart and I've checked and marked it, and you can see I've got 2 stake marks: stake, 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 and then on this side 1 stake mark, just stake, so that I know which way is up because it's staked towards the top, and which side is which when you go to put these back on. So always do that before you even loosen the main cap bolts. Now the reason why we have to take the pins out of the harness for the locker is that it has a grommet it passes through, but it's a much smaller grommet than that would fit that connector through. So we have to take the pins off, and then now I've just filled this grommet so heavily with silicone. Look at this. Look, that's all just silicone inside and out. But see, now I can pull that through. And then this can come out. I'm going to try more though to get that to come out probably. Both axle shafts are removed. Main caps are removed, so this should come out without too much quarreling. Okay, luckily those shims came off this side. I was able to catch that. But normally you want to be a little bit better about catching which shims come off which side than I just did. Looks like I got it, so we're okay. I always will set the shims way off to either side, just so we know which came from which side, and save us backlash setup later. As you can see, just welded right there. And so I wanted to pull this out and inspect, make sure this wasn't completely trashed, which it doesn't look like it is. Still moves freely and smoothly. It's got a little bit of this, but they always do have a little bit of thrust this way. So now that we've got it cleaned off here, and here's this one, it welds right there. I'm gonna let this brake cleaner dry before I start welding and burst everything into flames. I just realized that I'm welding an electromagnet, so that's probably not good. Wonder what damage I just did to it. Or my finger for touching that. I should have put the ground lead here so it didn't pass any power through the electromagnet. Oh, that would have been way smarter. We'll use the cordless tool battery. Okay, so that's engaged. Take the power off. It's free. Okay, I think we're okay. Okay, so now it's time to just make sure that everything's clean so we can get some silicone for that grommet with the wires for the electric locker. That was gray, but actually gray is my favorite. And this is my absolute favorite, which is Versachem's Mega Gray. Not Permatex Ultra Gray, but Versachem Mega Gray. For some reason, this just seems to work. Real sticky, seals real well, so we're going to use this. And we'll squirt some into the hole. It's like the inside part. Kind of rub it all around. Right here, that's where I drilled the hole. Every time start putting the actual differential carrier back in, so I like to just spray off with brake cleaner the bearing races and the shims, because they get just grit stuck to them from the process here. And see, that's all coated in silicone. These wires always get super goobered as they go through the hole in silicone, but that's okay. There it goes, it's in. I like to take just a little dab on my finger. Just kind of pack around the grommet just to make sure it's all kind of rubbed in and sealed up. But there's really not a lot of fluid or pressure there, so it's not the end of the world. We'll take some and put up around the top side too, the outside, with the actual tip. Then we've got main caps. Remember, so you see one stake towards the top. Let's find getting better light. This one and this one. Ah! Now always, always, always lock tight these bolts. Loctite paste. I don't know if I love it, but I'm using it until I run out of it. I will proceed to torque these to the precise torque spec. Another step that makes a big difference, your axle seals. Now these ones aren't leaking, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time right now. I got a trip here in a couple of days. I'm not going to just replace everything. But try to remove any dirt or debris from the lip of the seal. Fresh, clean grease. And get it down where the axle is going to contact the seal. So down in here, down inside the lip. You then do the exact same thing. You see right here, this is where it's going to contact the seal. So we need to wipe that off. And put some clean grease all the way around it. And also kind of up from it, because it's going to slide into the seal as we're pushing it in and trying to line up the splines. So coat that and go, so that makes your seals last so much longer. Now you've got to try to keep your axle as horizontal as possible going in here, but it's going to tip a little bit until you get it to the splines, and try to put as little force on the seal as you can. We're now splining it into the side gears inside the carrier there. Okay, that axle is in. The C-clips from before, let's spray them off and wipe them down. You'll notice with gear oil, everything just has grit and debris stuck to it after you set it down, because gear oil is so sticky. So you just slide that in. Whoop. Try to turn it so that gravity holds it on if you need to. And there's a little machined recess for that C-clip in the carrier. And you just push the axle shaft back into place, and now that C-clip won't move. Now, you remember the cross shaft from before. Remember it has a hole through it. So I always mark a line. I always mark a line on the back of it so you can see which way the hole is. Because as you install it, sometimes it twists, and you need that hole to be straight so you can get the retaining pin in. Ah! Spider gear fell out. I forgot. And that'll happen. That's okay. Now, if your spider gears ever do fall out, remember there's these kind of shim washers on the back. They're like a cone shape. This is kind of held on by suction of gear oil, but if it falls off, you want to make sure you put that back on. That is the bushing that the spider gear spins on. So it's not just metal on metal inside the case. So, whenever you have a spider gear that's fallen out like that, you have to take this spider gear and push it all the way through. So it's actually in this position, straight across from it. Stick this one in, straight across from it, and then you spin them back in both, because that'll bring that one back into place like that, see? Now they're back in line with each other. So this is the side that has the hole for there's a machine hole, there's a machine spot on both sides on a lot of carriers for where the cross shaft retaining bolt goes, but it's only actually drilled and tapped on one side, and that's this side. So, your cross shaft, pin goes that way. I'm gonna have to tap it just a little bit. And you see it actually twisted a little bit, but this will find it and straighten it out. That didn't twist too much. Almost out of lock tight in this tube, like we're down towards the very bottom of it. There we go. So it'll slide in. Yep, we got it straight. And time to just tighten her up. This doesn't need to be all that tight. Now, a lot of you that have been following my channel for a while know that I am a huge fan of paper gaskets and a really specific way of doing silicone on the paper and a specific way of torquing the bolts, and that has been really successful for me over the last over 20 years in the industry of doing gaskets, and that's worked really well. But I'm going to try something different. I know you guys have heard of the lube locker gaskets, which are basically a paper gasket that has silicone on it. You're not supposed to put any additional silicone on it, and then you tighten the cover down, and then if you ever need to remove it, you can take it off and put it back on without ever having to redo it. It's a reusable differential gasket. Well, the newer Chevys use this. This is silicone rubber wrapped around a steel plate. Now there's some real benefit to this. Those of you that have seen this style of gasket used in other places, it's really effective. And I want to try it because for, say, trail repairs, this is going to be far better. The lube lockers, I've actually, gone and pulled the lube locker back off, and it's still stuck and tore. It's still not one that you can just unbolt, wipe off, and throw back on, guaranteed every time. Yeah, a lot of the time you can, but not every time. But on the newer Chevys, I have never not been able to reuse one of these. So we're going to try one. And it's made for the newer trucks, but I think the bolt pattern is the same. Yep, look at that. So it'll either work, or I'll put it on the trail, it might hit some rocks and get beat up and start leaking. I don't know. Let's find out. I mean, I'm always open to trying new things. So what do you guys think? So I'm still going to torque it the same way I normally would. And first things first, I'm going to use an inch-pound torque wrench. I'm going to 144 inch-pounds. That's what I would normally torque that to. And then we're going to do a really unique torque sequence that I learned a long time ago from an old service manual. You'll start one bolt, you skip one bolt and go to the next, and then go back and get that one, then skip and then go back. Because as you tighten two bolts, it brings this one a little closer. So by doing that, because if you just go around in a circle, you're not quite making up for that. So that's what I'm going to do with this new style of gasket. It works really well when I do it with silicone, the RTV. Let's see how this works with it. We'll start here. Click. Skip, skip, back, skip. Back. Let's see how much difference that makes. Okay. Yep. Look, this one back, see, if I get a lot. That's okay. Okay. And go there now. Now here's my absolute favorite thing. This is Valvoline gear oil in a pouch that you can just squeeze in there instead of trying to dump it or squirt it, pump all those little crappy pumps that you buy from the auto parts store in a bottle and try to sit there. You don't have to do that anymore. And it's been around for a while, gear oil in a pouch like that. AMSOIL was one, or some of the more boutique fluid companies had a pouch with their gear oil in it. Now, boutique also meant very expensive and not readily available. You can get Valvoline down at the parts store. I just went down to the parts store and bought these. So this is actually the standard packaging for the Valvoline synthetic gear oil now. So now you can just squirt it in and not have to deal with the whole pump thing. And there you go, 1 quart in. How long did that take? 10 seconds maybe? Okay, so I didn't time the last one, but here's 1 more quart, the next one. And I'm not even like aggressively trying to put this in. I'm not, like speed or rushing. Two quarts in. Takes about 10 seconds a quart to dispense it. I'm spending more time talking about it than it takes to actually put it in. And that's really useful for trail repairs on the side of a trail, trying to get fluid back in. If for some reason you needed to get fluid in a differential but you've lost it, or you had to take the cover off, this is a lot easier of a way for trail repairs to get back on the trail.